again, thanks for everybody for putting these on.
Oh, very welcome. And since you're going to need to head out soon, would you like to make sure that if you have any questions, we get those in before you've got to skedaddle?
Best way would be to type those out too, so that everybody can see them.
Huh?
I don't have anything prepared for this one, but I am going to have a flock of questions starting the January 1st cycle, and I have been asked to moderate a couple of other forums for some campaigns, which is great. So I will share those questions with this group as well.
Ooh, beautiful. Thank you.
All right, so the candidate is off the phone call, so I'm going to let him join. So it was nice chatting with you all.
You too. Take care.
Go ahead and take it away, Brian.
Hi, Jim.
Hello.
How you doing?
How you doing?
Good. So welcome. Hope you're doing all right.
Yes.
Just a kind of an informal information gathering session so that we can get to know you a little bit before we make any sort of a formal endorsement. So
Okay.
If you want to make some sort of a statement and let us get to know you, you have the floor.
Okay. Just okay. First of all, I grew up born in Tacoma. I was actually raised on the east side of Tacoma in Fife, and I graduated from Fife High School, where I played football, basketball, and baseball. I then attended I was the first in my family to go to college, graduating from the University of Washington College of Architecture and Urban Planning. So I've been an architect and a Democrat. I'm a husband, father, and grandfather. So I know in Tacoma there's a lot to be proud of. I believe, my leadership has really made a number of projects possible with environmental work at Point Ruston, from turning to Sarco and getting the ground work for that one laid, and Tacoma Union Station restoration and the Foss Waterway redevelopment with the environmental cleanup there, among many others. So the sensitivity of environment is very huge to me. So, and I do believe that Tacoma can be the economic engine for all of Southwest Washington and the Olympic Peninsula. This is something that I believe as mayor I can make happen, so we can start growing living wage jobs in Tacoma, getting our funding for public safety replenished and up where it needs to be, and really listening to the voices of our citizens. That's, I think, fundamentally the problem to me has been that we're not listening to citizens. So my real goal in Tacoma is to change that culture of how we relate to our constituency, working with citizens, not against them, listening to taxpayers, not special interests. And that's really the fundamental to me. And there are many issues around there. So I'd like to just open up a nice informal discussion with you and to hear your concerns so that you can be comfortable with me carrying the flag for you and your constituents.
Absolutely. Very well stated. Thank you. I love how you touched on some of the environment aspects. I know that there's some things in the works as far as the LNG plant that's going in. What could you share with anything on that front?
Okay, well, I asked PSC for months and months to really define what the risks and the consequences would be for the citizens of Tacoma and the surrounding area if this was approved. They were never coming forth. Once I put my position that I was against the LNG on my website, they called the next morning to give me more of their PR. Not acceptable. We are looking at really renewables as our future. I've been a part of helping environmental companies and startups because I believe we need to look for the next 50 to 100 years. The next 50 years is going to be a little challenging because we do need to start making that transition. It needs to start now. LNG has a 50-year lease on this property down there. And what does that really mean, and why are we really accepting this? They are now building, going what's called vertical without all their permits. As an architect, I couldn't do that, and that I'd be red tagged. And so why are they able to do this? And that is a big question in my mind. So there's so many unanswered questions, and the issues that the scientists that are concerned about this speak to, we're not getting answers to those questions. And so I think we're in a real challenge here that we need to address this properly. We need to look for a better future. Renewables is where we better start moving, and now's the time to start moving.
Great, thank you. And to kind of elaborate on, you touched on how can they get this pushed through? How is it possible? That kind of leads into the whole money in politics and this whole lobbying thing that we've got going on between industry and politicians. Can you give us your thoughts on stuff like that?
Well, I just our goal as a campaign is to stay positive. We want to get our message out that we're going to represent the people and have an open door. What I'm concerned about is backroom deals. Both when methanol came out and the LNG, this was a done deal before we had any public communication on it. And there were elected officials that were espousing the value of this without having good information. So that is not acceptable. If you follow the money and those that are supporting the other side in this campaign, it's pretty apparent where the PACs are huge money is challenging my position, and I think that's very unfortunate. So the citizens may be really unaware of what's going to happen if it heads the wrong direction now. So it's very shocking to see the kind of big money that's being spent to put out misinformation.
And then what, in your opinion, is there any way that we can curb it? What can we do to fix it?
We just need to tell the truth. That's basically, to me, is I'm all about being open and truthful about what we have. Sometimes it's not good news to some people, and that it's open door. That's why, to me, it goes right back to change the culture of our local government so that people will understand before commitments are made, and so they'll be able to weigh in on decisions. So we just need to, at this point, just challenge the special interest PACs that we're not going to be, we're not going to let them just roll over to commit to a decision that isn't with the support of the grassroots people.
Are you willing to promote a public funding of campaigns?
I think, I don't know a whole lot about that. I think it would be good. I like to see these PACs controlled. I don't think that's what's getting out of hand to me. And I think through the PDC, there's a lot of monitoring except for the PAC. So these huge dollars. So yeah, I don't know that much about public funding of political campaigns, but it may be part of the answer. And I would certainly like to know more about that. It seems better because then it's across the board. There's allocations of dollars, which what we're really trying to do is just get the message out, get a person's message out so people can make informed decisions.
Have you ever heard about the American Anti-Corruption Act?
Yeah, I don't know much.
Okay, if you don't mind, I'd love to forward you the information for that. It's represent us as the ones that head it up. But I'd like you to see if you take a look at it and see if it's something that you would get behind. It is about anti-corruption and ways to change the way our elections are run, and it has some of these information in there. Am I going okay? I kind of froze on my side.
Yeah, you're going in and out, Rhonda.
Huh?
You're going in and out. We didn't get any of it the last couple of sentences.
All right. I'm just going to go ahead, if you don't mind, I'm going to send you some information on it, see if it's something that you would look over. And if so, we look for people to endorse that as well. It has to do with anti-corruption and some election reform. And it talks about public financing and stuff like that.
Okay, that sounds very good. Sounds very good.
Well, I also wanted to look into your views on what's going on with to be put forth as a Medicare for all or a single payer, and I wanted to know your thoughts on feel about that.
100% for it. I think we have tragedies happening in our community where, people going bankrupt because of healthcare. That's just ridiculous. And I think, you look at all of the statistics around the world, we're kind of the worst in the world, actually, in industrial societies. They're just like, this is awful. We have to start getting to that. So that was actually one of the key reasons why my wife and I were very much Bernie supporters in the last election cycle of 2016. because he was looking out for the people. And I'm for that 100%. So let's get to it. I think Medicare for all and getting to single, obviously maybe it can't happen overnight, but and I read a lot about, the for-profit insurance is just for-profit. We're not getting down to helping people first. That's what we need to do.
And so I'm kind of looking through your submittal on the vetting form that we go through. And some of the things is the repairing infrastructure.
Start gaining return on investment for Tacoma and the South Sound. Pierce County and Tacoma are not getting their return on the investment in taxes that we are paying. When Sound Transit was proposed, we were to have what was called the spines of the system. The Sounder train, which is very good because it's on a rail and goes between the major centers, and Link Light Rail should have been the same thing. They've kind of gotten directed in areas that it's nice to have it in smaller stops and that, but we need that as a spine with the local systems tying to that spine. How do we get it in 5 years? I think there are ways. I've been involved 30 plus years with transportation authorities and transportation projects. In doing that, you got to look at all of the elements. There's about 9 or 10 really components to a project like this. I think we can start moving towards that. What I'd really like to see is almost like a separate team. And it may sound kind of frivolous, but it really isn't. That it's already coming down to 320th and Federal Way. So we're 8 or 9 miles to get there. You start with with looking at a route, and that's not that difficult. We have some very simple routes to get from 320th to Tacoma. We need to do it in 5 stops to the airport, not the 12 or 13 or 14 from airport to Seattle. That means the South Sound could have a competitive advantage. But here's what I want to do. I would really like to encourage a separate team working from Tacoma heading towards 320th. I'd like to have a competition. You're going from Star Lake down, and we're going to meet at 320th. Whoever gets there first gets a bonus. I think it can be done. My goal is 5 years, but actually it'd be very exciting, and I don't think it's unrealistic. I think we can get there. They're saying
it's actually been used in the past too. If you look at the railway system, it was built the same way across the United States with Manifest Destiny, so it can work. So yes. I totally agree with that.
How about a golden spike in 320th and Federal Way in 5 years?
There you go. That would be great. Wouldn't that be cool?
We can do it. We can do it. We just gotta have a will.
And then I have another question of, so recently it's been in the news that Tacoma is the #1 most violent city in the Northwest. That's probably no secret to anybody that's lived there. But I wanted to know if there's any police reform, any such other policies that you would be able to help to kind of curb the whole rash of violence that happens in the Tacoma area.
Well, it's tragic to see how this thing has been moving in that direction. I'm very proud that Local 6, really those out on the patrols, are supporting my campaign. They realize that I am 100% for making their funding a top priority. Right now, we're probably at, in some cases, about 50% of beat officers out there in the 4 sectors. They're diverting some of those officers to other areas which they shouldn't be diverting. We need it out there so they can respond to citizens. I was even talking to an officer yesterday that he was stressed out because now he's been more than even asked about mandatory overtime, things that are being stretched to the limit. They just can't do it with half to 3/4 of the staffing that we really need. So we need to get the numbers up. It's shocking to me, even though it's not apples to apples, when the police force in Seattle is nearly 5 times larger than Tacoma's. Something's wrong. Something's wrong in what we're responding to our citizens and helping. We have got to turn this around, and it's got to be the highest priority. We need to get tax base up to do that. That's where the jobs come in. We need to get jobs growing here for tax base so we can afford to get the police presence the way it needs to be. The officers are aware of that I will make it a high priority, the highest priority to get that up. So it always, there's a linkage there. We need to get jobs going. You need to be a reliable city so people will trust being in this city so that we can afford to invest properly. even though that'll take a little bit of time, we need to start diverting the funding to make sure we start building that police force back in the areas that we need responsiveness first.
Regarding policing, are you at all interested in police reform or community policing, increasing educational requirements for police officers to reduce abuse by police or along those lines? Because Seattle has had so many problems that they've been federally reprimanded. So I don't really want to mimic Seattle in any way other than maybe density of police officers. Anything on?
I think there's a huge need just for good education, de-escalation, learning how to really diffuse issues instead of seeing them ramp up to make worse. So I think there are ways of certainly doing that, and I like to encourage that. I've been supportive of I-940 because of the educational components of that and to help move that forward. I know there's some things that are looked at in that particular initiative that probably are going too far, but I'm not certain that right now we need to at least get that step going for education. We need to do that. And that I have a son-in-law that is a police officer. He did have college training in psychology, and he's very good at defusing and de-escalating problems.
Thank you.
So with that, is there anything we can do about private prisons? Because like we all know about the prisons in our area, and some of them are private. I'd like to know what your view on what we can do to fix that.
Well, we need to be diligent about this. I am not for private prisons. I think this is it's a part of our public requirements to provide the but we need to start diverting, getting back to public service. And this is part of our public service to our citizens, not private prisons.
So, and that sort of leads into the whole drug war deal. I mean, we're putting people in prisons for petty offenses related to drugs, but then you've got these drug dealers and opioid users that they desperately need help, but we can't give them the help. Instead, we throw them in prison and then expect them to reform themselves. I'd like to know your thoughts on that.
We have to start helping people in the health of drug addiction and mental health in a significant way. This has got to be something that really becomes a high priority for our community. We need to start looking at programs that it's not just a drying out, but it's a matter of really reprogramming and almost rewiring and getting a different thought on how you look at drug addiction. I think it's awful. I'm glad to see the challenge the opiates, because opiates then leads to heroin, and now this is an awful thing. I was at a seminar a couple of months ago with a number of doctors, and they think it's very tragic that the pharmaceuticals are just ignoring the fact that this is basically almost decimating a whole generation in our society with opiates and then to heroin. We have got to start doing better and making this a priority. But it doesn't help with just, like I say, put him in prison or in tent cities. We need to do it where we have programs that first help with self-esteem, help with a program that they can see a future in that, and those are really fundamental. So I want to really be one that will carry the flag for this need. It's at state, regional, and local levels that we need to start providing these services. We need to do better. There are a number of private agencies that are making some headway, but it needs a lot more. And as the mayor, I need to start pushing the state and even start allocating. We start growing our tax base to start helping people one-on-one.
So, and you said something about the future there, and when I look at the future, I mean, I look at our children, right? And our education system is way behind on a lot of levels, and the funding is essential. I mean, we can't even afford to pay our teachers how do we expect them to teach all of these people, all of our children in these classes? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, first of all, I think we do need to start making certain we get 100% funding for public education. I'm a product from pre-kindergarten, the kindergarten, all the way through college as a public system. I am against charter schools. I think they're a diversion of funding. We cannot go there. Tacoma was basically given almost like a whole snow job of stories that they've got through in this community. So we have a couple of charter schools, and some of the things I'm hearing are not very are very unfortunate. I'm not happy with that at all. So we need to start getting back to understanding commitment for public education and no diverting of public funds. I think the Tacoma School District is making great strides. I attended the Graduate Tacoma a week ago or so, and that was very good. We're getting over 80% from where it slipped without a whole lot of commitment a few years ago to like in the 50% range, which was ghastly. So now there's been a major commitment to get our graduation rates up. I think SOTA and SAMI, the two specialty schools, and even I think the highlighting of Oakland School is moving up in Tacoma and is helping. So I want to be a big advocate for that. But you know where I also believe there's great strides we need to start focusing more in the city is pre-K. I think we need to start taking care of kids from birth until we get into kindergarten. There's got to be more help there. And there are some things, and even my daughter explained something. We had two little boys that learning the lessons and how you take care of kids in those first 5 years is a huge thing. I want to be advocating and spreading that word everywhere I can.
So you touched on something that's very dear to my heart. So I'm a stay-at-home dad. I've sacrificed my career and professional life to stay home with my now 3-year-old, and it's been quite the experience and humility, I guess, and humbleness. But one of the problems that we run into is affordability. Okay, we're trying to live on one income, and there have been very many sacrifices, right? So childcare is one of the most unaffordable things that I have had to come across, besides insurance and medical costs. But what is there that can be done, at least on a city level, to help the lower income people be able to better themselves to pursue opportunities outside of being a parent?
Okay, there's a lot of factors involved in this. First of all, I think we need to start helping getting areas for childcare that are affordability and something that is more of a broad base, whether it's company based or even regional based in the community. We need to do better on that. I cannot believe where the costs are going on childcare. My wife and I experienced the same thing when we were raising our 3 kids. Luckily, we had a 2 income because my wife worked at a hospital here in Tacoma on the hilltop. And she started at 3 a.m, so she got done at noon, and I took care of the kids, and so they weren't very much into daycare. But it still was costly, even when our kids were small. So it's a challenge to me that is very difficult. Very difficult.
It looks like we have some more people coming in here. So if you're not speaking, go on ahead and just mute for everybody that's watching.
Please mute.
Sorry about that, Jim.
Or I'll mute for you. Never mind. There we go.
There we go. Do your job, admin. Yeah.
The other thing I'm very excited about doing is called the City Municipal Bank.
Yes, I was actually just going to ask about that. So
this is a huge thing. This is how
I would love to know more about that one, because that one
we're going to help our disadvantaged, our low-income folks, and our young people. This is what will do it. What we're going to do, and this is not a giveaway, this is part of how you build equity for people. We need to get people into home ownership first, so they're not looking at these ghastly rents getting out of hand. Now, how we're going to do that is, first of all, set up down payment program. And there's actually a HUD grant right now that's in place. We can start using for a $10,000 down payment. But the real key is going to be monthly expenses. And what I would like to see, and this isn't, I don't think that difficult. We're working with bankers to work out the details, of course, but to set up so your mortgage is tied to 30% of income. Now, how can that work? Well, it can work so you can stabilize your family. So you set up your mortgage based on that, and then after a few years, the way economy goes, there is a gradual by you investing in that, and you stay in home ownership, you can now get some equity and start, when you get to that you have equity, it can be refinanced. At that point, you pay back the municipal bank. You can be into what's called a conforming commercial or residential loan, and you can start building an asset. That's a huge thing to me. What we need to do, see, I learned this back when I was in architecture and urban planning school. Neighborhoods and communities start to have difficulty when they drop below 60% home ownership. Right now, Tacoma is about 50% overall. The reason it's even what's 50%, we have two neighborhoods that are hovering around 20% home ownership. You can't have stable neighborhoods with that. Now, rentals are still necessary. We need to help with stabilizing with affordable units, and how we get those to any tax incentives and affordable units have to be tied to long-term for rental. The rental would be when we need to get encouragement so you get to that 60% ownership. So you could see our generation, when you get to be, 35, 40, you got an asset. You got an asset instead of just paying out rent. We need to get you the young people, and also the municipal bank can help with these student loans, because student loans are killing young people. They get the investment of their education and they got a huge loan. We cannot let that happen and burden them unnecessarily. So we need to have it so we can structure to help people in a municipal bank. That'll start building an asset for Tacoma too. I think it can work, and and there's some other things about how you start getting housing into affordability level that doesn't just that's more community based. And so there's lots of avenues there that I want to work with the financial industry to make this successful for all of the young citizens and those with lower income. We can do it.
So I have a question. As an architect, you might have an interesting or awesome ideas on this, but it's around neighborhood design. So we have ancient neighborhoods in Tacoma and business. We can't start from scratch, but there's walkability issues, and then with as properties deteriorate, get bought, and then rebuilt. The design of the new homes might not really match the neighborhood, but at the same time, they might increase density. So, and I don't like urban sprawl, so I promote density. At the same time, I'm in an old neighborhood in South Tacoma. My house was built in 1900. I also want to protect the look, feel of my neighborhood, and a good example is behind the Tacoma Mall, west of the Tacoma Mall. They had put in a lot of structures that I don't like the look of them, but I think it's a high rent neighborhood, or not high cost, but density renters. And we also saw an increase in crime in that area. And while it's at the mall, we're building density without neighborhoods, without open space, without grocery stores. Is there a way to incorporate your history of in architecture with where we're moving forward in Tacoma with design policy, I guess, for lack of a better term?
Absolutely. In fact, at the neighborhood council level, I have been it's really not detailed design review, but early awareness design review. That's so you don't get these things that are incongruent with neighborhoods. I think we need to start moving it so you do have something that will start really looking at what the future is going to be for neighborhood infill and development. I think a couple of things, like over in 6th Avenue off of Prospect, I think there's like a 2 or 3 unit place was plunked into a neighborhood which is around 1910, 1920 houses, and it is ghastly. It should not have been in that neighborhood. Those things have to be prevented. I also think there's we need to relook at how we're doing our zoning and our infill for duplexes, triplexes. There's all sorts of issues around there that I want to be a part of readdressing. We also need to look at what I called underutilized commercial property that could be our future residential. I think there's thousands of acres of property that are looking at transitional commercial, which should be residential. And there's a number of examples about that. One of them on 6th Avenue was a Kmart that closed. That would be a perfect spot for 10 or 15 acres that residential should be in those, instead of fragmenting long-term historic residential neighborhoods. So I think we have a lot of work there to do. The problem with zoning right now, it's number crunching. The kind of things you've got, it's very difficult to see how different investors or those that are going to build interpret the code. That's where the fundamental problem is, why I want early awareness, and we need to look at the implications of what those zoning regulations really mean in the world. It's not just a matter of height, it's a matter of character and what we call vocabulary in the design world. So I really want to have a bigger discussion about this and start getting something we know where our future is going to be. It's part of an overall vision that the city needs to have, and I'm excited about getting that discussion started next year.
Thank you.
Does anybody else here have any other questions that they would like to ask?
I do have some more questions. I'm actually a Tacoma resident, so you were touching on housing and opioid addiction and whatnot, but we also have a disproportionate number of sex offenders in Tacoma Pierce County due to how the state releases sex offenders. Is there anything, is that a topic you've thought of? Do you have any solutions or suggestions for that?
Well, a lot of that, with McNeil Island is the sex offender prison that I know we have out there that really is in our county. We need to start reinforcing what I believe was the law at the state level, that release would be to the county of origin. That needs to be really held. We need to hold the state accountable to make sure that does happen. And that, so as the mayor, I need to speak out to the state and say, you need to do your job as was already mandated to make sure that is fulfilled. And I don't know what the future is for McNeil Island. I'm not sure. I think that's a very costly prison use for this kind of use. It's very minimal on a very expensive area. Maybe we need to start looking at the state for dispersing in other areas so it isn't just Pierce County's issue, because it has been long term, both for Western State and McNeil Island. These have to be something that really they start doing more appropriately into the area of origin.
Okay. And then we are lucky enough, I'm going to jump around. We're lucky enough in Tacoma to have 2 public Montessori elementary schools. My child goes to one, and I travel 5 miles one way to get her there. And so it's very important to me. Are you aware of Montessori? Do you support Montessori? Because the school board, they waver in financing of it. And so I wondered if you like it, if you can use your bully pulpit. I'm not sure how connected the mayorship and the school board are.
Well, actually, I know all the school board members. I know the superintendent. We actually talk quite often. I can be an encourager. And I actually live real close to a Montessori school in that. And it's very good. It's part of that whole thing of K to K5, or excuse me, from birth to 5 years old. That, the first few years or the preschool time period, I think is very important. And that's so I like Montessori schools, and that so I'd like to encourage better programs, because Montessori, the other one is First 5 Fundamentals. There's another program that I'm aware of, and so the whole thing of really encouraging and making certain that our school board and our administration in the school, with encouragement from the mayor and the city, to really be a part of making that a viable way of moving, pre-K. So.
Okay, so to continue with education, a lot of people of color and local tribes, and it is beyond the scope of just Tacoma, but they support charter schools because they see it as a solution for underfunded schools. In fact, I'm in the 29th legislative district, and my representative voted support charter, even though he doesn't support them, but because his constituents, the 29th legislative district, overwhelmingly, it was like third most yay votes in support of charter schools, so he represented his district in his vote, which I admire, but he actually doesn't support charter schools. And so I had discussed with him the possibility of an educational campaign to educate people on both its origins, being ALEC, American Legislation of Exchange Council, but we need to, one, make improvements of these schools that motivate people to support charters, but we also need to inform people of the negative aspects of charters. Do you, so I guess, support education? Because, you know, I don't want to ignore the local tribes or communities who are primarily people of color. And so, but I do feel like they need to be more informed, at the same time pushing for state proper funding of the schools so that they don't feel a need for charter schools.
Well, I'm with you 100%. We need to look out for the tribes. I actually grew up with a lot of tribal members, the Puyallup tribe. I know them personally. I know the challenges they've had over the years. I see some of their arguments. I am against charter schools. We need to make sure we fund our public schools. I do think maybe there's some other alternatives through our Tacoma School District that we need to consider. I do like what Sammy and Soda are doing for students right now. I think Oakland over there on off of Center Street is actually doing a lot of good too in some of those areas. So I think what we're doing with charter schools is really sad. I think we need to start listening to those that are having challenges in the school, in the public school system, and keep working for solving those challenges. And public funding of it is mandatory. We need to get that up to the proper levels. And I certainly want to be a big advocate for making that happen. And so we have to stop this diversion that we have because it's not helping us.
Thank you.
Hi there, guys. I jumped in a little late on this. Do we have any time? Can I ask a couple questions or? Okay. Hi, Jim.
Hello.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. I don't know if you guys have talked about the Puget Sound Energy project going in the Tide Flats, the LNG plant. I just wanted to get from you, kind of personally, how vested you are in not having that be a part of that area. I've been involved as an activist. I've been one of the people that have been on the front lines there, doing it, civil disobedience actions. And a related issue to this is how you see your relationship with the police chief in the area in terms of how they treat activists that are engaging in nonviolent civil disobedience actions to express their disdain for putting this project in and jeopardizing the lives. And you mentioned your relationship with the Puyallup tribe. They're very much against the LNG. They're very much worried about how it might impact their water system and so forth. So if you could comment there, I'd appreciate it.
Okay. I am against the LNG. I gave, and I think it's tragic that they're not answering what I call the risks and consequences that this plant may mean for our community. We have to look at what renewables are the future. We need to start moving in that direction. The transition will not be easy in some cases, but letting a 50-year lease happen was something that even really isn't clear how they're going to use it ultimately. And some of the things I hear about the size being really under the need for certain kinds of permits, which can be something they can get in the future to expand this, is very sobering, and I'm worried about that. I think this represents another deal maybe behind closed doors. That's the root of my philosophy that we need to change, and no backroom deals on any project that is impacting our community. We do not need that. We need to be asking first. When our council, city council, actually committed and signed on to this before the citizens knew about it, that's a tragedy. When I ask PSC to their face, answer the degree of risk and the consequences, and don't get answers, this is very upsetting to me. When they're looking at now a construction really going vertical. In other words, to me, there's like a 3-step process in permitting. You can do demolition, which they did. They can do ground prep, which they did, but now they're building the structure without all their permits in place. I can't do that as an architect. How come they can? I was actually challenged by one of their supporters. Well, why don't you sue them? And I said, I'm going to sue them? Why doesn't our city step up and do the right thing, which is red tagging? How can this happen? So the Puyallup tribe knows I'm with them on this. A lot of the citizens know. it's very upsetting to me when I see kind of the business in the deep pockets, people going against me when I represent the opportunity to get good jobs in this community. It's because of a single issue when I want to do the right thing. The fact of the matter is, in the past, they were upset with me in past decisions because I'm looking for the right answers. Once you get the right answer, I think they can come around, but it's going to be a struggle. We need to make sure this is done right. And right now, we're not getting good answers. There are past history that PSC has, by the way, where they were challenged by communities and things can be stopped. So, and I was challenged a few years ago that, well, it's already a done deal, Jim. What are you doing? I say, well, that's not really true. We need to have good answers. We need to do something thinking about all of our citizens. Some of the things that we may be faced with are not acceptable to me. When a retired firefighter I ran into a few weeks ago told me that he spent his whole career in the tide flats. He is very concerned about this, but he's not able, where's his platform? He thinks this is a potential that is catastrophic. Why are we letting this happen without the right information coming out is mystifying. Let's keep fighting the battle. The other question there, as far as civil disobedience, safe and nonviolent protests are part of our society. I was part of them growing up too, and certain things. We need to do that. We need to have it so the conscience of our community understands what the issues are. Sometimes it takes a little more because whether it's media, whether it's deep pockets that'll fund things in to divert attention. Obviously, we're seeing some of that in this election. We need to do better. Next week, when the election comes, I think we're going to surprise those folks that the citizens want to take back the pulpit, and we're going to have an open door. We can have these discussions. We will challenge things that do not have widespread support.
So, regarding how you see your relationship with, like, the police chief, I'm not really sure exactly how mayors are normally, involved with the police and what their influence is. But I just think that, and this might require changes in the law, but I don't think we should have people having to suffer through felony charges and face potential jail time and large fines and this and that, just for engaging in, a citizen response to getting no movement, no response from the people who are putting in fossil fuel related plants that are poisoning us. And global warming is a huge issue, as you know. It's something that it gets baked into the cake, so people think they can get away with. There's not huge problems right now. They can get away with doing it. Well, it's already in there, and it's going to be happening later. So we need to stop that now, not yesterday, really. And I just don't get. There's no urgency, I don't think. And I think that the protesters are trying to say that there needs to be a sense of urgency, and I don't think that putting their lives on the line should really penalize them to that extent. So I just wondering if you could comment on that.
Well, again, civil disobedience should be acceptable, and I don't think you should be laid on with a felony or any kind of jail challenges, because that's not acceptable. Just like a year or so ago, maybe 2 years ago now, with the methanol challenge, and a group wanted to just put an initiative on the ballot. Our city council sued them with the port, and sued them so they wouldn't put the initiative on the ballot. That's not acceptable to me.
Right.
The right of the citizens to manage and control their own destiny future is paramount. These are representatives of the citizens, and it shouldn't be reversed. That's why we have to do this in a more effective way. So as far as I have a good rapport with the police chief. I have the backing and endorsement of Local 6, which is the beat officers, and they know I am one that will listen, will find good solutions. But I don't take behind closed door deals, and that. So I don't, I just don't support heavy-handedness in these situations.
I mean, if it's non-violent, Jim, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Why is that such a really gross offense that needs to be really screw an individual for doing it? I mean,
that has to be. It should be acceptable and societal, where we challenge issues to get the word out, and I don't think that's wrong at all. So I think we need to work with the police to make sure there's areas that, I mean, let's say you have to have a protest area, which will push this. And, you know, PSA, those are kind of fanning the flames, and that's not acceptable. They're trying to push our
Right.
force, our police force, to do certain things that are not necessary. And that, so I think, you know,
there's six people. There's 6 people that are suffering charges right now for blocking Puget Energy from building where you have said right now that they shouldn't be building without having a proper permit, and yet these protesters are in the legal system right now fighting for their life, basically. So I just wanted to make sure you're
that
aware
is
of that.
tragic. We cannot let that continue like that. Not acceptable.
Yeah. Thank you, Jim.
Absolutely.
I was hoping that we would be able to discuss some of the homeless problem, actually, and kind of talking with with the prison reform. There's not really anything to set people up, you know, once they do enter back into society, and not only that, but the least among us. How can you explain that one?
Okay, first of all, I am not for what is known now as the tent city down on Portland Avenue in Tacoma, down Portland Avenue. It's about for 80 people. This, I think, is heading the wrong direction. What I'm told from the agencies in Tacoma and Pierce County, that the city kind of did this whole system without even collaboration with all the agencies that are working on certain components of this. There should have been a collaboration of all the agencies to come up with a strategic plan. So I do not believe that this is understanding. We need to be working on stability for people. We need to look at the mental health issues. We do have 120 beds that is being built by Elmore right now that will help in that. The addiction is part of that. Each of these components, we need to work with the agencies that are doing those pieces and come up with a coordinated strategy. Homelessness and having the small housing that is now happening in a few other communities. We need to see what that would be like, that we could start implementing that. I do not believe transitional housing alone. That is actually not a good system. We need to do something that will really look at housing for more long term, and that will get involved with programs so they start getting people that have been homeless as part of self-esteem, getting treatment for mental health, getting the effective treatment, which I think is a long-term treatment for helping with addiction issues, and then working to training and skills to get them to a stable life. Those things all need to happen. It needs to be a coordinated way. I asked a few people, well, is there any start of, to me as an architect, I look at org charts, what's out there, where are the pieces and what are the holes, instead of just developing with a guess of what's available. Kind of human psychology that everybody thinks everybody else knows what we're doing. It's not true. You gotta figure out where all the elements are. So I'd like to see a comprehensive look at, and there's ways to layer this. So what are the elements we need? What are the agencies that are already providing some of those, so that we can see visually what is all available and where we have to start investing. What would have been better if the city would have spent $3.5 to $5 million helping 10 agencies, as opposed to spend $5 million on 10? That's only going to be for a few months. Now we hear they're talking about 5 more million. What is going on? But I think there are better ways to do this, and we need to be more collaborative with those that are really on the ground with folks right now and understand those challenges. So I think we have to start looking at a better approach. I don't think we're there yet, and I think it's unfortunate what we've done with some of what really is the culture out in the homelessness does have a culture. And there's things there that I've learned in talking to a lot of folks involved with that the tent city has actually disrupted that culture. And there's a lot of fear right now. So we need to somehow start helping 1 or 2 at a time. Just think, if we would have been helping 5 people a week for the last 6 months of this program, where would we be now? We may be better off. So we got to be better.
It all adds up. It all adds up. And the thing about it that's so apparent is that, you mentioned Portland Avenue, like that's one of the first things you see. You come into the city right there, and there's people panhandling, and there's tents on the side of the road. And I mean, it's just, I feel for the people, but it's very disheartening to see that when you're coming into the city, and it kind of gives the first impression of, that this isn't the best area. So what is there that can be done about that part of it?
Well, again, we need to work with the agencies that are there where we can get component housing. The Metropolitan Development Council does have a housing program. The Tacoma Housing Authority has some. The Tacoma Housing Authority is looking for a housing program that is over on about 10 acres over more on the west side of Tacoma. So it needs to be more dispersal. It needs to be smaller components that are tied to some of the agencies to get that work done. And it's not just in plopping the tent. The other tragedy I do hear from the Pallot tribe, by the way, is that some of these that are during the day, they're actually going down to casinos and hanging out in the casinos, and there's a lot of disruption there too. So it's spinning out of control. We have to get back to a strategy with agencies to start looking at solutions of housing and help and training to get people on a better pathway. There is a component, I totally recognize, that are kind of locked in. That's all they want. They don't want help, but I guess I'm an optimist that even we can help those folks with the right pathway and not ignoring each person's needs like we are doing right now. Tell you one last thing, because even Catholic Community Services, now I can't speak for them, but what I hear, it appears that they're kind of concerned with where this is even going, and they're supposed to be managing the tent city. So it's like, what is really happening here? And I intend on hearing a talk actually tomorrow about where the status is, and I'll know more then after tomorrow. So I hope
and it's kind of unfortunate the way that Seattle's going about it with the whole sweep process and stuff. And I would hope that if you were to be able to get into any sort of position, that you wouldn't advocate for that sort of interaction.
No, I'm not for the Seattle Echo. I don't want to do that. And that I don't like some of their programs up there. Maybe the scale of things is different. I don't know all the strategies why, but we need to do what's best for Tacoma. And I don't think the way we're headed is the best way.
Yes, I completely agree with that. And you talked about the little brother of Seattle thing. I'd like to know how you stand on the 15 an hour minimum wage.
Well, again, I think backroom deals were made where this was pushed down in Tacoma. I think minimum wage of the 15 should have been implemented. I think there are ways of training that could have helped some of that, I suppose. But still, I mean, that's not even living wage. And it's just like, we're behind. We're behind. And we need to understand that we need to set that. And our whole economy will adjust. But we have to start taking care of people so they don't have to work 2 or 3 jobs just to survive. That's not acceptable. Yeah.
Completely agree with that. So, hey, I appreciate you coming in and having a talk with us. I'd honestly really like to know some sort of your background, not in a political aspect. I mean, what sort of things do you like about the city, and what sort of things would you like to see as far as like just entertainment value or fun value that you just like to enjoy in the city and like to kind of promote?
Well, I'm very much, as an architect and artist, music, I'm kind of involved in all of those things. I love I think our history, our museum district is awesome now. I was part of the team of people that encouraged to get the University of Washington Tacoma. So I love the way the University of Washington Tacoma area is maturing. I think that is great. I love more and more of the activities, even the Tacoma Dome as being more of an event center. That Garth Brooks is going to be there for 5 events this weekend. I can't go to them, I don't think, because I got a campaign all weekend. But next time I can go. But I just there's so much about the city I love, and I just want to start getting so we have a happy city. We need to, so everybody has an opportunity, and we can do that. But we can't just say it. We have to have strategies of how we're going to get there. And so you don't have to travel 3 hours on to get to work, that you can get jobs growing here. And so, and then of course, our waterfront has just been super. And it's really fun to me to see people even from all over the county come to, our waterfront and say, well, this is our waterfront too. They may live in Puyallup, but our waterfront from the Dome to Defiance is our South Sounds waterfront. And this is awesome. And
that whole, I remember the actual transformation of that whole area. And for me personally, that was my area. Whenever I was having anything going on and my area was to go down to Ruston Way and Point Defiance, make that 5 mile around the whole Point Defiance, come back down through the tunnel. It was just, I loved it. I loved it. To this day, I still love it. So well, that's been a great transformation to see.
See, I consider that 5 mile drive through the Point point of defiance. It's almost like a diffusing component to me. It's kind of, it relaxes you. So I like to do that too. And whether bike or even drive through, just kind of take a deep breath, and it makes you feel good. Now, there's something interesting that I've been hearing of late, because our waterfront is starting to come alive all the way along our waterfront edge, and that is pathways to the water. In other words, that people are saying, well, what about this route to the water, whether it's Ferdinand, whether it's Baltimore, whether it's 36, coming down through 4th Avenue as it comes down, how we touch the water, and how do we look at kind of celebrating those paths to the waterfront, even to understand from the south end and the east side, what are the pathways to the water? You know, all those are important. If we start doing that, then we become not just an edge, but we become the whole city gets to celebrate the waterfront. We all have our different pathways. That can be done with all sorts of, whether it's whether it's just as simple as flags along a pathway, so everybody knows this is the way to the water. And a lot of people don't probably appreciate that. So I think there are ways to kind of make everybody feel a part of that. So I could go on and on. There's so many good things, but we need to start, there's so many things to take care of, make sure that we have this happy city. And I think we can do it. We can start making some inroads pretty quick in the next year.
Awesome. Is there anybody else that would like to ask any more questions? I think we're getting a little bit towards the end here.
Okay, I have one more. There's been discussion on a national level about prices, like housing prices in New York and San Francisco and other major areas being inflated due to foreign investment. Is there a way to balance, because if you prevent foreign investment, maybe that's its own negative because we need investment, but is there a way to balance to make sure that foreign investment doesn't artificially raise our prices in our on our land in Tacoma?
Right. Well, first of all, I am concerned there's something called, you never heard of an LLC? That's a limited liability company. There are those that are starting to gobble up some of our residential property. We have to figure out a way to make sure that can be addressed, but I go back to this municipal bank because what I want to do is get our citizens involved in home ownership and in affordable housing. That's where we can start helping our citizens. So this whole thing of foreign investment should not be then a detriment to helping our citizens grow an investment and equity in their own lives by getting into home ownership. This will be huge. That's why I want to do the municipal bank, to help with down payment, also tying mortgages. So the housing market then, I believe, can be stabilized. And then we need to start exposing some of these LLCs and making certain that we don't have a carving away of really what is really a good housing stock that we have in Tacoma, that we get it into home ownership. And there's some other what I would call other particular steps along the way that I'd like to probably test with the financial industry and real estate groups to make certain that we do things that are effective to help our citizen base. We need to grow equity and affordability. We can do it both in this bank I'm talking about, as well as tying any tax incentives to affordable housing long term. Cannot be eliminated. It has to be tied to the property use over the long term. And then, so there's so many issues involved, and I'm excited about, with my background and as an architect and doing many residential, multifamily, single family projects in my career. I know what the pieces are. I know how to help. I know how to make chat to challenge, and making sure I hold people accountable. I'm looking forward to that.
Thank you.
And again, Jim, thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate it. You've been a great guest to have on, and my first guest that I've actually been able to interview myself. So as a fellow Tacomite, I appreciate you and hope that you get yourself a mayor position.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to help everybody. Thank you very much. And so remember, a vote for me is not a vote for an agenda, it's a vote for a seat at the table. Everybody will have an opportunity to come in and share their thoughts. And don't forget, if you haven't heard it yet, that we're going to have a ceremony the first week or so in office. We're going to take the door off the hinge. It's the mayor's office. It's open door.
There you go. That's great. That's great. I like that.
The door is going to be a table, not a door.
Cool.
No closed door.
Hey, you take care, and thank you. Thanks again. Wish you the best of luck.
Thank you. I hope we can talk again.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so much, Jim. I really appreciate your time.
I enjoy talking with all of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
Bye.
See ya.